Hey there, this is Pat Ennis of Ennis Legacy Partners. Welcome to the Exit Readiness Podcast. I'm here with co-host Walter Dial, CPA and tax partner at GRF CPAs and Advisors in Bethesda, Maryland. Our mission here on the podcast is to provide you, the business owner, with subject matter expertise on topics pertaining to building transferable or sellable business value, and then for planning your eventual exit from the business. We want to help you build a business that's transferable and then help you exit successfully and on your own terms and conditions. And in building a sellable business or transferable business, there's a number of key drivers of value. A few would be financial performance, of course, a growth strategy, strong management team, diversified customer base, recurring revenue. Those are a few, but another one is strong systems and processes. And if there's one area that we have found that business owners that we work with tend to put off, an area they tend to put off, it's making sure that their systems and processes are documented, clearly documented. They know it's needed, but it's just simply one of those things that's continually on the to-do list. But it's absolutely important, of course, for future growth and scalability and for a successful exit. If Walter and I wanted to buy your business, we're going to want to see that systems and processes, of course, are in place, but then too that they're documented so that we can know how to run the business that we're going to buy from you. So that's what we're going to discuss today. Our topic today is systems, trust the process. And our guest is an expert in helping owners establish a systems-focused culture that elevates best practices and removes workplace stress. Who doesn't want that? Jason Henderberg owns Henderberg Business Solutions and has been helping small businesses grow efficiently for over 30 years in numerous leadership roles. He has a wide range of business knowledge, gained primarily in manufacturing and construction industries. And he has clients located throughout the U.S. Most of his clients are typically 100 or less in regard to staff. His system success programs are designed to produce the results, the kind of results that all the owners that we work with want. The business not being held hostage to any one employee who retains all the knowledge in their head. And this often includes, of course, the business owner themselves, who can't even take a vacation because everything's in their head and so on and so forth. That's a result that he's shooting for with his system success programs. Another would be businesses sold at a higher multiple, which is what we're all about here. And then too, of course, all workflow becomes more streamlined and efficient. And Jason is a guy who loves doing this. He loves creating systems and processes and documenting them. So he's unusual in that respect, at least we think. And so it's great to have him with us. He's an expert on this stuff. He loves to talk about it, as you'll see here in a few minutes. And so, Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Pat. It's always enjoyable talking with you guys with the like-minded business focus here. I love it.
So, Jason, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. One thing Pat hit upon, as we're trying to help clients position themselves for exit and grow the values of their business, I think because of the size of the clients we deal with, which is generally, 5 to 20 million, something like that in revenue. One of the big issues is always that the owner is too central to the business value. And my response to that is always, well, you need to build a management team. But it's interesting because I haven't really thought of it in terms of systems. That's something we look at, but it never really dawned on me that management team is great, but you still have to have systems, or all you've done is moved your head knowledge to someone else's head.
Exactly.
So when you talk about trust the process, what do you mean by that? What processes specifically are we talking about as far as the business owner is concerned?
What I've seen, Walter, typically is you've got a business that's worth something because you've put a lot of work into it. So you must know what you're doing. And it doesn't, like you said, matter if you have a management team doing a lot of the work or if it's still the owner, but that you've got processes in place. And what I've found is that when you actually document those processes, and it sounds so easy and innocuous to say, oh, we're just going to write down how we do our work. But when you do that work, it really unlocks a lot of little secret value adds for the company. And one of those is being able to free up an owner or even managers to do other things. But when you write it down, and you can have a backup person in place to go on, so you can go on vacation or whatever your need is, or get promoted, you can then trust that somebody else is going to be able to do the work just as good as, or very close to, the level of quality that you're doing it. And with a lot of the owners that I work with, what they will often say is, I don't trust handing over this XYZ type of work. Doesn't matter what it is, doing payroll, leading a management team, whatever your goal is as a leader, you've got to be able to delegate almost everything. Obviously, there's some inherent knowledge that you possess that makes you unique as a person, but if you can't write it down or explain it to somebody in simple terms, then you really don't have anything to turn over. So there's nothing to trust. And that's where the trust is an extremely important word for me working with clients, because that's the root of, I think, why people don't want to share any of their responsibilities. And that just creates that space for them that you'll never be able to get out of. You've locked yourself in a box because you're not going to be able to delegate any of your work. So if you can trust what you've written down, that somebody else is going to do that work just as good as you can relax and turn it over to somebody else.
I think the owners we work with, they get that. I mean, they really do. I think they understand, because it's logical. It's logical. It's easy to understand, right? It makes sense. You just said explain clearly, Jason, and write down. That's where it gets to be tough. Is particularly the writing down part, whatever that means these days. Mostly, it's going to be some kind of electronic version of it, more than likely. But what do you say how do you help owners who, okay, I get it, but man, it's been on my to-do list forever. I hate it. I hate doing it, and so on and so forth. What do you say to those people?
Yeah, the two things are, you want to just start with some of the basics. Anything that can be delegated to somebody else or is repeatable. Those are the two key things that I always talk to owners about and managers. If you have something in your day that you're doing that can be delegated and is repeatable, you're doing it over and over again as a manager or an owner, you need to have it documented in some way. Now, you said the word written. I think I used that phrase before as well, but in my programs, we use video cameras. We do Zoom recordings just like this. And with AI now, you can have your audio recording transferred over to, transcribed into written text. And what I'd say is, like, if you're doing that work anyways, that's when you want to do that type of recording to capture what you're doing. So that's not this extra chore of, oh my gosh, I've got to spend 2 hours today writing down how I do payroll, how I do this or that, the other thing. You want to find the time when you're doing that and be prepared, because you have a mindset for developing your own systems and documentation to, I'm just going to hit record on this Zoom recording. It's just me. I'm going to record my screen and I'm going to talk through the process of what I do. And once you do it once, even if you don't write it down, even if it's not going to be cleaned up and used in a formal manner, you've got something that gives somebody else a lifeline. That's step one. That if now all of a sudden you as an owner gets hit by a bus, or, and all kidding aside, I'm working with a client now whose husband just passed away. The wife had not been involved with the business and nothing was documented. She has no idea how to run the business. So similar to now, she's got to sell it and there's really no value to the company. But if the husband had at least done some video recordings, some Zoom recordings, something like that, to get some of that knowledge out of their head, you could transfer that business over to somebody else and actually have some value. But you've got to start the work. Even if you don't like it, you've got to start the work. And again, you don't have to make special time for it. You do it while you're doing the work normally.
Yeah, so it's never been easier to do it, really, right? Because, one thing we do know, Walter, most of the business owners we work with like to talk. They may not like to document processes, but most of them like to talk. So if they can find the time and prepare for the time and then just hit a record button.
Right.
That's all it takes these days.
Yeah, that's a game
really
changer.
all it
That's
takes.
amazing.
Yeah, it's just a shift in your mindset for at least starting the process. Now, the programs I lead are much more in depth. You're using a very simple software to house those things in an organized manner so that you can then share it with other employees or share it with a prospective buyer. But at least as an owner, somebody that's always really getting pulled in a lot of directions, if you at least start the work, there'll be something that you can transfer over to somebody else.
Have you seen companies emphasizing systems more now that a lot of businesses have remote workers?
Yeah, remote workers is one thing, Walter, and the other is the high turnover. It's hard to get employees, and when they come on, you don't know if they're going to leave in 6 months or a year. So a lot of managers and owners are spending a time training and retraining the same type of information over and over again. So once again, similar to selling your business, if you had documented the basic steps on how an employee that's coming on board will be doing the work, then you can eliminate that repeated work of training somebody. It just makes things a lot more streamlined. You have a common message. Everybody's agreed on the best practice, how to do that job, because you could do something different than I, and we finished the job, but yours might be better than mine. So if we all agree on here's the best practice, and here's how we're going to train somebody new coming forward, everything becomes better. You don't have one person doing something over here differently, and the whole process is improved. So you have more value for the company. Everything improves. Your sales could improve. The way that your accounting department processes credit cards and things like that could improve. Everything would get better when you come together and agree on what the best practice is.
So, with the work that we do, we will spend much time finding out what goals, objectives for exit are, and all the goals and objectives. And so then we can eventually make the right recommendations. Is your process for helping owners with processes? It must be pretty much the same, right? I mean, you got to go in, and what does that look like for a typical client engagement? What are the first steps that you would take with the owner or whoever it is you're working with on their management team to do this?
Yeah, I've found that 3 to 4 months of an engagement with me is really what it takes to get momentum going, because the worst thing that I could have as a consultant is come in, give you a bunch of knowledge, how to do something, set up a program, I leave, and then it stalls, right? I want what I'm doing to be sustainable, to be a legacy thing that can get carried on. So we spend the first usually 3 to 4 weeks of really understanding who your perfect client is, your perfect vertical. What are you selling that even if you have a lot of different product lines, what is that perfect vertical? And what are the roles of each of your employees? After that, it's very important then to choose probably the top 20% of the systems that support that best client and that best product line. Yes, you're going to have a lot of other things. This type of work is going to take, many, many years to get it right. You're not going to be McDonald's overnight. Or I use the analogy of going to the gym, right? This is just like going to the gym. You're not going to be going to the gym and working hard for a week, and then you're going to be huge next week. It's not like that. You're going to put your time in and slowly chip away at documentation and about recording things and improving your processes. So those first few weeks, sometimes owners will get frustrated because they're like, I want to get to the work of doing the documentation. That's what we hired you for. But I found that if you don't do that foundational work of understanding those things first and really getting a grip on how you're going to organize your documentation and which is the most important thing to work on first. So if you're an owner and you're about ready to exit because something happened in your life and you want to sell quickly, right? You've seen that happen all the time. We're going to prioritize working with that owner and getting their knowledge out of their head. But if sales is really the most important thing it's lacking right now, or advertising, we're going to work on that. And we'll do some other work, after that. But we want to make sure that we triage the work of documentation so that it's efficient. And when you start going, you get the momentum you need. You not check that first big win, the one that will make the biggest difference. And then you make sure you have a strategic path afterwards to continue the work on in a very organized manner. So it's not just helter skelter. You document, I'm going to document it's too unorganized. And that's where I feel that people don't do that type of strategy work enough, and they just try to jump to the further steps along the way, and it's not successful. You have to do that planning up front.
Yeah. Do you bump into this where they've you go in and you start that work and you find out that they've got a number of different software packages in place that are in siloed. And they may have bought them for this purpose, to help with, and then they're either not being utilized fully or at all, or they're not coordinated with other systems. And you see that, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, and not only software, but employees that are doing the same role, or you name it, the dysfunction, even at very large companies with very big, prominent names that we've all heard of. It's very surprising when you get behind the curtain and see the disorganization a lot of times, because everybody is so used to just putting out fires every day and not doing the strategic work. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah, people want to go to that next shiny thing. I'm going to bring on this software or that software, and it's so complex. You only might use 20 or 30% of it, and you're not fully getting the whole value out of that software. So a lot of times when I'm inside a company for several months on a regular basis and looking at a lot of details like this, I can at the end say, hey, you really should be shearing off these other roles, or combining roles, or removing the software, and I can make recommendations in that way, so that your operations become much more efficient. And then when you are ready to sell, you can get that higher multiple. And I have also clients that are going to be selling soon, and that's why they brought me on, to start extracting, and then I can turn them over to somebody like yourself, or in vice versa. You have brought me on to help with getting things cleaned up. It's a really nice relationship to be able to work together like this, to make sure that the customer is supported, because everybody that I've seen that is getting closer to selling, again, they're not doing the strategic work. They haven't reached out to somebody like you, Pat, and they don't have the confidence of what's my business worth, or what are my next steps. So just like I'm asking them to do strategic steps to get ready for documentation, you guys are doing that really good work of preparing them mentally and organizationally to be ready for the sale, because once it's too late and you have to sell in an emergency situation, it's too late. You're going to be really hustling to get the sale done.
Hey, Jason, let me ask you something. So with the explosion of technology, does a company need to be reviewing their systems more often than they used to historically?
Yeah, it's a good question. So even when I do work with somebody, the first thing is how are we going to store this software? Store these systems. And I rep several different types of software that are extremely simple and extremely inexpensive. And all it's used to do is house the software. And the beauty of that is it's not stuck in a 3-ring binder like it used to be. It's not stuck in somebody's Word or in somebody's OneDrive and nobody has access to it. It's got to be accessible. So if we put all of the employees into this simple software, and you assign the departmental knowledge that each of them needs, you can also set up automatic reminders a lot of times, so that after a year or 6 months or whatever the cycle time is, when you think that the documentation would become outdated, you assign that as like a calendar reminder, and the software will say, hey, it's time to review your X process. And you can get together and do that work of going in and recalibrating it and see if it is still valid or not. But what I often talk about with clients is, if you try to shove this type of initiative at somebody and have them become a systems focused culture overnight, it's not going to happen. Just like bring on a new CRM software and everybody's like, oh my gosh, I got to learn something new again. And people resist. So I don't engage employees almost until the last couple of weeks. We're just working with management. And I want to make sure that the methodology of documentation is understood by management, and everybody's doing that work. That's why I want a couple months. You've got to get used to doing that work with me. And then by the time we're done, you can start deploying it to key employees, and they can feel good about what they're getting. It's very refined and simple to receive, even in a phone app. But when we delegate like that, we want to make sure that that they are using that knowledge in a finite manner. So it's not like, here's a whole chapter of a book and you've got to read all these things in order to know how to do your job. That's too much. People don't have time. You're doing your job every day. But if you drip in this type of knowledge, and I always use that word drip in, that phrase, during your management meeting or your weekly, maybe you're an EOS company and you've got a weekly rocks meeting, and you say, we're going to take 5 minutes and talk about this process. and just dial it in a little bit for maybe your sales meeting, and you drip in that knowledge of systems throughout people's weeks and days, it makes it a lot easier for them to digest it, so that it's not like one big thing that's thrown at them.
I would think as a result of the work that you're doing, Jason, that at least occasionally org charts get changed.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, actually, it's funny, over the years, especially in the last year, org charts have been, and roles delegation has been one of the biggest requests when somebody brings me on. You know, they've always got a key thing that they want to do, and yes, we want to do documentation, but the subset of that, and like I said, in the initial few weeks of doing work together, redefining roles becomes very important. So through this documentation process, you can quickly see that we've got 5 people, 6 people like purchasing in this small, 50-person company. Like, it's absurd. But companies often grow so fast, as you've seen, like, and they get to a point where they've scaled up so much that they haven't stopped and hit the reset button. And that's often what my programs will help them do, is hit reset, and we'll look at, let's reset who's doing what. And it's not appropriate for this person to be doing all of these things. Let's tweak their role. And it takes a lot of pressure off of the employees. And that's where I talk about, in what I do, is removing employee and owner stress. That's exactly what it's all about. Is employees are so stressed because they've got so many new things that have been put on their plate. Maybe others have left and they haven't hired anybody. And now we can do a reset, and like, your skill set is this. Let's focus you on this type of topic, and then assign these other things over to this other person, or hire somebody new. But by doing that reset work and really defining that org chart better, again, it makes everybody's life a little bit more clear and easy. Clarity is very important.
We've got all kinds of owners. Some are more DIY types than others, or at least they like to start there. How can it, for listeners today, can you give them any insight or direction as to, yeah, you could go ahead and try it yourself and do this, or no, you know what? If you're XYZ, you should probably just go ahead and hire me or someone like me. Do you understand the question?
Yeah, and I do offer like a quick turnover, like couple of meeting program. If you think you've already got it and you just need some quick guidance or recommendations, I'll do that. I also offer like a 5-week accelerator program. So if you have a quality person inside, like the quality assurance manager, or a very strong HR person, or you've got an in-house trainer, usually these are roles that come along once you're closer to 100 or more people. Usually the smaller companies, 20 to 50 people, don't have those people in-house. But if you've got that staff, then I can provide you an accelerated course on how to have that person doing it inside. So we would get through a lot of the meatier stuff of the strategy and stuff, but I would get their software set up, show them a few samples, turn over a bunch of documentation on how to do documentation work, and then they're off to the races after usually 5 weeks. And they can always reach back out if they've got questions. But if you've got that key person inside, then by all means, I don't want to be that person that consultants that's lagging on and continue. Oh, we got to call them again. Hopefully, if I've done my job, you can be up to speed with that person in about 5 weeks. But that being said, Pat, most of my clients, everybody is so busy. I provide what's called a concierge program. I'm going to be doing most of the work for you. I'm going to be doing the video recording on site. I'm going to be setting up GoPros with employees if it's a manufacturing site, doing the Zoom recordings if you're an insurance company and you've got some stuff online you're doing. And then I'm going to be doing the actual documentation work. And by the end of the program, 12 weeks, you're going to see what I'm doing, and you're going to be able to start doing it a little bit at a time in yourself to make it sustainable. But that's why I've developed that 3 to 4 month program, and me doing most of the work, because everybody is so busy. It's just not feasible a lot of times to do that on their own.
Okay, so if you went to our website, if a listener did, or you did, or anybody did, you'd see our tagline says "Enjoy life in the business" and "Plan for exit and life after the business." And the enjoy life in the business happens, from our perspective, when you build a business that is transferable or sellable, because you can take that vacation that that you're helping people to take. Have you experienced working with owners where they've done this work to the point where things are running so well that they're enjoying life in the business so much that they decide that their exit strategy is, I'm going to be an absentee owner? Because that's an absolutely legit exit strategy. Is I'm going to be an absentee owner, and I'm going to take care of ownership transfer of my estate planning documents to whoever and however I'm going to do it. Have you had that experience with owners?
Yeah, it's not often that owners actually see it through far enough, but it does happen. You've probably seen it too. And that's the most exciting thing for me, where an owner's actually embraced this systems culture enough that they can step back. Sometimes I'm actually brought on specifically for, I need to exit the business so that I can stay an owner so that I can start this other business or do this other thing in my life. Maybe it's semi-retire so that I can get freed up a little bit. But you have to embrace this type of work. You have to believe in it and really trust, again, the process to delegate the work. So it's one thing to have documented things and have backup plans, but if you don't actually trust this and let some things go, even if somebody does something 80% as good as what you think was the best best level of quality, you've got to be able to trust that you can let some of those things go. And I've got a couple of recent clients that are actually in that position where they're going to be starting an early retirement and taking a day off per week. And then they're strategically going on 2 days a week. They're going to be kind of semi-retiring because they're really believing in this, engaging it, and delegating a lot of the work to others. So it's absolutely doable. And that's when I get excited. I've got another person in my network that they are almost not involved in the business at all. They attend like a Friday roundtable meeting with management. They're not engaged at all anymore. And a lot of times the business can operate better without them. You don't know, but sometimes the owner is so fixated on, they know it all. I'm the best person for this job, but they may not have grown with the business. So they're still in the weeds doing the work when they should have grown and delegated a long time ago, so the business could operate more efficiently and they could do better strategic work and visionary work instead of being in the weeds doing the day-to-day work. Then again, so that's where I see so many advantages to doing this type of systems documentation.
Good. Yep. Walter, any other questions on your end?
Just one. I'm not sure how this is going to come out as a question, but it's interesting because like in our firm, I'm old, so I don't like changes, and it just seems like once a week I'm getting, we're changing how we're doing this or that. So I gotta, and I don't really like all the technology stuff. So maybe this will be less of a question and just more venting by me. I don't know. But here's what I find odd about systems sometimes. So I'm going to give you 2 examples. Many, many years ago, being a CPA, the most critical thing is capturing your time. So many, many years ago, you'd have a timesheet that you would fill out by hand, and you would turn it into somebody at the end of the month, and they'd enter it into the billing system. Then it got to the point, obviously, where now everyone just inputs their time as they go into the computer. And that's fine. That doesn't take, that's actually probably faster for me than handwriting it. But then you come to something like billing, which for me, it was a matter of, I would get this huge billing book, and all I had to do was just write down on the PDF, bill $1,000, carry the rest, or bill $1,000, write off. Well, now we have this great new system where we can actually, tied into our time and billing system, I am now supposed to do my bills. So my response is, okay, so I've gone from something that I hated to begin with, but at least it only took me a couple hours, to now something that I really hate, and it's going to take me all day. So, and it's great. We freed up the admin person, I guess. So I'm wondering, is it people like me who are the biggest stumbling block to implementing systems? Is it the older owner type guys?
Yeah, it is. I can tell you. It's people like you.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
And me.
Yeah, I
Uh,
don't think it has to do with age. I think it has more to do with not wanting to accept change. And another slogan that I often use is, change isn't inevitable, or success isn't inevitable, change is. Like everything's changing all the time. But I
Yeah.
think our tolerance as we get older changes, right? So when you're young or in your 20s, everything's new and you're just constantly shifting your life and changing things and changing where you live and moving and changing jobs. And then we slow down because we get more comfortable. We have a steady family, we have a steady job, and things get more consistent. So I think that it's just age as a result of our not accepting changes easily. It's just a result of getting older, but it doesn't mean that you can't. I've got some owners I work with that are extremely progressive. Some are much more technically savvy than I am. And so it doesn't always have to do with age, but it's just your willingness to adapt to change. But if it's something that's not serving you well, so if you've got a new software program or a new system that's actually making things worse, then that's something that we should really uncover and talk about. Like you shouldn't be, even if you're saving the labor of somebody else doing the work with you, you shouldn't be having more burden on yourself as a salesperson or as an owner, right? It should be easier with the technology, not harder.
okay, so as we wrap up here, Jason, this has been fantastic. No, it would be. Uh, is there anything that we should have talked about that we haven't talked about?
No, I think we covered a lot. It's really a symbiotic relationship that I have with business brokers and M&A guys like yourself, because we really need to work together to support those clients. Because like I talked about before, they are often either nervous or untrusting of somebody that's going to try to sell their business for them if they haven't gone through a sale before. So if we can work together to support them, and that's why I like working with Ennis, is because you guys have the same values as I do. It should be a long-term relationship. We're not looking for an immediate sale, an immediate kickback or something that we're looking to get from a client. It's an ongoing relationship that we want to work together so that they feel comfortable selling their business, that they feel that they've sold it for as much as they feel it's worth, right? And it's not always the case. Sometimes they're like, oh, it's worth X, but it's really not. So if we can work together to actually make them comfortable and feel that they've sold at a proper rate and that their life's work wasn't for nothing, I think that's a big win. We've got to work together with people like myself or other attorneys or others in our industry that help support those business owners that are selling their business, because it's a big deal, right? It's something that you've put your entire life in. It's a lot of time it's your entire identity as a business owner is that baby you've created. So if you can't sell it for the right multiple or can't sell it at all because your identity is the worth of the company is tied to you, then we've got a problem and we need to fix that. And that's what I love doing.
Listeners, if there's something that should be delegated or is delegated or is repeatable, let's make sure that they're documented.
Right.
And it's easy. It's so easy now. You just have to talk and record and have it transcribed. It's so easy. Even guys like Walter can do it. And so
I'm not sure I go that far.
And let's make sure to do it, because this is so essential to not just enjoying life in the business today, but boy, when you go to sell, if your business is sellable, transferable, you're going to have more exit options.
Yes.
As we're always preaching. And your business is absolutely going to be more transferable or sellable if what we've talked about here today is in place.
And the sooner you start, the better.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. That was another voice, listeners, not just us saying that, but someone else saying the sooner the better. So please, we would encourage you to get started sooner rather than later. So I'll turn it over to you, Walter.
Great. Jason, thanks so much for joining us. This has been informative and enjoyable. So thank you.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Before we wrap up, 2 questions for you. Anything that you would like to promote today? And how can listeners get in contact with you?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn. So Jason Henderberg. If you look me up on LinkedIn, there's only one of me. And then Henderberg.com, Henderberg, Henderberg.com. And you can see a lot of the different services I offer related to systems documentation. Again, my biggest offering is a 3-month program where I do almost all the work for you. And you have a really nice playbook and a lot of momentum for your team to carry this forward after the 3 months.
Fantastic. Thank you very much again. And listeners, if you want help in maximizing the value of your business or planning for your eventual exit, you can reach Pat at 301-859-0860, and you can reach me at 301-951-9090. And you can always access resources at exitreadiness.com, grfcpa.com, and nslp.com. As always, until the next time, thank you for joining us on the Exit Readiness Podcast.